Welcome to our Russia review of political institutions. Federal government structure. In Russia, we have a federal system. 89 regions divide Russia into that federal system. 21 of these 89 regions are ethnically not Russian. Each region is bound to the federation. Most of these regions call themselves republics, but power is developed and deployed unequally across these republics. This is called asymmetric federalism. Many of these republics enjoyed a very large degree of autonomy and self-rule during the presidency of Yeltsin. This has changed under the rule of Putin. Putin has led an effort to crack down on the power of these republics and force their allegiance to the federal government. A couple ways that he did this is through the creation of 7 super districts encompassing all of Russia. Each of these super districts, which is comprised of a couple republics in most cases, is headed by a presidential appointee. He also has taken the power to remove governors from these republic positions. So any governor of a republic can be basically fired by the president of Russia. Governors today are nominated by the president and not elected locally. That all changed in 2004. He also eliminated the single-member district or single-member seats in the Duma, the lower house, and raised the proportional threshold to 7%. All of these factors taken together have served to pull the republics closer to the federal government in Russia. Linkage institutions. When we talk about political parties and interest groups, they are still very weak in Russia. There is no real tradition of any of these groups due to the Soviet Union. And it really undermines any attempt Russia has made to create a liberal democracy. Linkage institutions have also suffered by Putin's centralization of power away from the republics and towards the federal government. Political parties in Russia were very popular at the outset. The first presidential election and Duma elections, you had multiple parties participate in a multi-party system. But none of these parties has had any real staying power other than the Unity Party and the new Communist Party. No real loyalty has been developed because the parties don't serve much of a role in the periods between elections. Putin's reforms have also dampened or chilled the number and scope of Russian political parties. The United Party is Putin's party, created to help elect him, and it has no clear ideology. It's a power party, and in most instances a catch-all party. The Communist Party of Russia is the second strongest or most influential party in Russia today. It is not the old Communist Party, but it is much less reform-minded and conservative when compared to the others. You will also see the Liberal Democrats and the Fair Russia Party also play a very small role in Russian elections. The Yabloko and the Union of Right Forces are 2 parties that were very popular at the beginning of the new Russia, but today face extinction, mostly due to the changes Putin made in election to Duma seats. Elections in Russia. The Constitution supports 3 different types of vote. A referendum. 2 of these have been used in new Russia's history. 1, confirming Yeltsin as president, and 2, a question of Chechnyan independence. Duma elections are the second type of vote. This is a proportional representation. And presidential elections, which is a majority winner with a 2-round model. So if the president or the elected candidate was unable to earn more than 50% of the vote, a second round of elections would occur with the top 2 vote getters. Interest groups in Russia also struggle as part of a linkage institution. Interest groups were not allowed during the state corporatist system employed and controlled by the USSR during that period. In today's Russia, we have a few informal interest groups. The oligarchs, rich, affluent, young Russian developers who came into power and became very rich with the change over from communist to a market economy. They were very influential in early Russia, and they are responsible for supporting and saving Yeltsin's presidency. They also are responsible for surviving Yeltsin's downfall. They helped create the Unity Party, or United Russia, the party that today is Putin's base of power. Putin has not been as receptive or open to the power and the money of the oligarchs, and they have clashed. It has gone as far as some oligarchs fleeing the country, like Guzinski, who is currently in exile, and Khodorkovsky has actually been placed in prison by Putin for corruption charges. Interest groups today exist and operate in Russia a little different than what you will find in the other AP6. Putin still decides which groups are going to have input into policy making. Government-owned businesses and privately owned businesses that are loyal to Putin are allowed in at the table. So what you're looking at is a corporatist system once again. This type of system is sometimes called an insider privatization system. The Russian mafia also has a role in linkage institutions in the fact that it influences like the oligarchs. It is not only based on underworld crime and a black market, but they also operate a number of reputable businesses which give it influence and power. The media was strictly controlled under the USSR. Under the USSR, newspapers and media were state-managed and state-run. This all changed with the new Constitution in 1993. Under the Yeltsin presidency, the media enjoyed a vast amount of freedom. But once again, this has all changed in the midst of Putin's ascendancy and control of power. Like China, some media is allowed, particularly media focused on corruption. So some amount of investigative journalism is allowed. Media is privately owned in Russia, but it is heavily censored and controlled by the state. Suspicious deaths have taken place with members of the media and media owners who have supported anything that has been critical of President Putin or his administration. The President and Prime Minister derive from a system created in 1993 that fuse many assets of presidential and parliamentary systems together. Russia has a head of state and a head of government. The head of state is the president, and this is the focus of power. The head of government is the prime minister. The president is directly elected to a 6-year term. There is no vice president in Russia, so if the head of state was to die or leave office, the head of government would take his place. The president is limited to a 6-year term, and he can only serve 2 consecutive terms. The presidency also consists of the 2-ballot system, and they will hold a runoff if one of the candidates does not achieve 50% or more of the vote. Presidents have a huge amount of power. They appoint the prime minister and the cabinet. They have the power to issue decrees that have the force of law, and they have the power to dissolve the Duma. The legislature is bicameral, and it is a very weak institution. The Duma is the lower house with 450 deputies, all elected by proportional representation. It has the power to pass laws, approve the budget, and approve presidential appointments. But again, it is very limited since the president also has the power to rule by decree. Technically, it does have the power to impeach the president, but this would be a time-consuming, cumbersome, and many would say impossible process. The Duma can also be dissolved by the president. The Federation Council is the other half of the bicameral legislature. 2 members from each of the 89 republics represent them inside this upper house. The representation is very similar to the U.S. Senate, where these 2 members represent their individual republic. They have no real power and can only delay actions of the Duma, very similar to the House of Lords in the British system. The Duma can override any actions taken by the Federation Council by a 2/3 vote. Judiciary and rule of law. No independent judiciary existed in the USSR, and it revolved around the power of the Communist Party. The Constitution attempted to create a system not controlled by the executive, and a constitutional court with the power of judicial review was created. It has not utilized this power of judicial review and has not made any controversial decisions during its history. Putin went as far as to move it away from Moscow and the political center of power to make sure that it did not become active. The '93 Constitution also created a Supreme Court to deal with appeals of civil and criminal law. It does not have the power of judicial review. Wow. We have a special guest. Check it out. It's Vladimir Putin. One of the big downfalls of the judiciary in Russia is the fact that they don't have a large amount of trained attorneys for this new system. Putin, during his presidency, has spent a great deal of money on reform. Jury trials are a huge change in the Russian system. The writing of procedural codes for criminal and civilian rights was also created. But this is a system that is still in transition, and corruption is a major problem. The concept that we take for granted here in the United States, innocent until proven guilty, is still not a reality in Russia. An independent judiciary is not apparent currently in Russia, mainly because the courts have not shown to have any tendency of challenging any of the decisions made by Putin's administration and the Duma. Thank you for watching this Russia review. Oh, hold on. Yes? Yes. Vlad just wanted me to tell you guys that if you're bored, please go ahead and re-watch the Blackberry Hill video and catch some of Putin's wonderful piano playing and singing. Bye.